guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here with 2023 preview and prediction for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Looking at this coaching staff, Mike Gundy, 156-65 record through 18 seasons in Stillwater. Casey Dunn, he's been on the staff since 2011. Fourth year in the role as the offensive play caller. Jim Bob Clemens, Brian Nardo, still trying to fill that void left by Jim Knowles just the other year. Biggest headline for the Cowboys, 17 straight winning seasons. That's a pretty remarkable number. Final year before the new look Big 12 takes shape, which I certainly think will benefit Oklahoma State in the long run. Looking at this offense, Nick, this has certainly been a far cry from what they had in the Mason Rudolph days, and then before him also. The scheme seemed to be, tailor-made around Spencer Sanders. You saw a lot more pistol, a lot of QB run. Hasn't really been the old school air raid under Gundy that we're accustomed to seeing. They didn't really seem to air it out that much. They weren't able to stretch the field as efficiently. They look at the portal, they lost 11 guys, they added 9, they returned 7 starters, so a good bit of experience here. Again, this offense being tailor-made around Sanders is very interesting. And you also combine that with the loss of 4 of the top 5 pass catchers. Alan Bowman's going to take over under center, has a strong arm, showcases some zip on his throws, does well versus blitzes, showcases some touch. Hasn't really seen the field since 2020. All those traits, Nick, are from them. Has a long injury history. He was at Texas Tech, and that's where he was really successful for them. Ended up transferring to Michigan. Didn't really see much playing time there. Garrett Rangel, Gunnar Gundy, they both had more picks than touchdowns last year. Both looked really rattled when they got the good nod at quarterback whenever Sanders was down and out. So I think Bowman's going to be the starter here. I think he certainly fits more of this air raid scheme. It's exactly what they ran at Texas Tech, 6'3", 215, a veteran here. How will he do, though, because he's really not seen the field much over the past couple seasons.
I like Bowman here a lot. I think he's a good piece to have for this offense. Like you said, kind of fits the scheme very well. Talented player. Injury history has kind of caused him some issues, right? Hasn't played really at all in a while. Bounced around college football. Was with Michigan, Texas Tech, kind of moved around a little bit here. I think he's better than the two options, Gunnar Gundy and Garrett Rangel, kind of sitting behind him. They also have freshman Zane Flores, true freshman Zane Flores, who's on the bench. So the deep quarterback room here. Obviously, Sanders transferred out. I figured he would have stayed. It's kind of shocking that he left the program. I figured he'd have one more year in him. Thought that was a very interesting move for him. But overall, I think, Bowman is a good player, 6'3", 215. I like the size. Got to stay healthy here. But he works in the scheme here, the air raid. I think he'll be able to air it out. And there is some talent in this wide receiving core that could certainly help with that.
Yeah, there's some solid turnover at that position. They lost 3 notables. They added 2. Arland Bruce and Dezion Shribling, who was a good jump ball artist at 6'3", 204. Wasn't the leading pass catcher for the Washington State Cougars this past season. Brandon Presley, a do-it-all playmaker who led them in yards and receptions. Plays bigger than his size of 5'8", 175. He's also a big-time player for them on special teams. Jaden Bray, Blaine Green, Rashad Owens, some promising veterans that have been around a while. I think this is a very good receiving core if they start to extend things a little bit. Obviously, Washington State ran a very similar scheme. So Stribling, he's going to come into this offense and be just fine. I think overall we're going to see an increase in production through this passing attack, mainly because they have a quarterback who can really execute it a little bit better than Sanders. And I definitely don't think this is too concerning what they have at the position.
I think this is a good group. They return their top 2 receiving pass catchers, which is good. Presley's a very good receiver, 813 receiving yards this past season, 12.1 yards per catch and 2 scores for him. Green, a good piece to return as well. Green, I like him at that wide receiver H role. Good spot. I think he's a good player. 584 yards receiving, 16.2 yards per catch, and 5 scores for him this past season. So there is some talent here overall. The room has some depth to it. Some of these younger guys are not too bad as all, and obviously they add in Stribling from Washington State, who is a good player, and the size is fantastic for jump balls at 6'3", 204. I think that's a good piece to add. Some good players as well. Rashad Owens is well involved in there. He had only 6 receptions in a limited appearance. He only played a couple games, but he's a good piece to have as well. I think this room has some depth here, and there's some good wide receivers.
Biggest concern is the run game. 97th last year, a little over 125 yards per contest on the ground. Plenty of options, but they do lack experience in the backfield. Ollie Gordon, 6'1", 211. He's going to split time with Jaden Nixon, who's 5'10", 185. And Elijah Collins transfers in from Michigan State. Some nice raw talent here for the Pokes. I think this running back room is certainly going to help them go a long way. Obviously, some of these guys don't have a lot of experience, but I think in terms of raw talent, this is actually going to be one of the more underrated groups in the conference.
Certainly a little concerning in terms of pass production, but I think raw talent, there certainly is some good numbers here. I think, when you look at a guy like Gordon, I think he's a solid piece to return overall. He had 300 yards on the ground and 2 scores this past season. Nixon as well, limited touches, but he had 181 yards on the ground. So I think there's some balance there with those two. I think they both have some nice speed to them. I think, Nixon at 5'10", 185, I think that's good speed. Gordon, a bit of a bigger back, kind of a bruiser that can definitely run some people over. So I think it's good to have that kind of 1-2 punch there.
Look at this offensive line. This is a group that's also going to go a long way in determining how good this ground attack is. They return 4 of the 5 starters. They lose right guard Hunter Woodard, who was their best player up front. Dalton Cooper, he was an elite player for Texas State. He transfers over, all Sun Belt player, looks to slot in at left tackle. He's been a polished pass blocker for a couple of seasons. Jason Brooks struggled last season, but he can play anywhere on the O-line. He's likely going to be the left guard. Joe Mikowski allowed 19 pressures. He can play anywhere on the interior line. Preston Wilson wasn't much better. Jake Springfield, he allowed 24 pressures, but was a mainstay for them. Certainly the best returner, Noah McKinney from UNLV that picked him up. He has coveted versatility, 6'5", 310. Don't believe he has much snaps under his name, though. Caleb Etienne really struggled at left tackle. Came in last year as a transfer, gained 1K snaps of experience. Improved physicality is going to be the focal point here, clearing up some better running lanes. I certainly think that's going to be something they accomplish this year. Pretty hopeful for this offense overall.
It's a good offensive line. Dalton Cooper's a good piece to add from Texas State. Really solid player who had good experience out there. Elite player, good size for him, very polished. Jason Brooks as well at left guard. I think this left side's very solid. 2 good guys here in Cooper and Brooks Juniors. Jake Springfield as well. I like to see a big season of him at right tackle. Preston Wilson, pretty solid piece at right guard as well. I think this offense has some good pieces. They certainly have opportunities to get better here. 30 points per game is not a bad total, certainly, and 400 yards total is not bad either. But you can certainly see those numbers get higher under a Gundy offense. I think having Bowman, who's more of a traditional air raid quarterback, will certainly help with that.
I'm going to go with a B overall, just because I think a lot of things last year were concerning. And again, the offensive system was really tailor-made around Sanders. I don't think the transition is going to be that difficult at all. And I definitely think they'll certainly push B-plus type of production. But Alan Bowman health is still a question mark. And how these receivers will all gel together is still going to be an issue, a bit of an issue also. I'm not too concerned. I think this unit's going to be really good. I think they'll be in that 33, 34 point per game range. But the offensive line still was very terrible despite returning 4 starters. So I'm going to be optimistic, but I'm going to be cautiously optimistic, Nick. I think that's the right approach here of Gundy's offense.
Certainly think that's a good way to put it, cautiously optimistic. I think a B is a good grade. I think, like I said, it certainly helps having a quarterback that's more traditional for the air raid system. I think that really does benefit this team. The completion percentage is fantastic in the limited appearances that he has had recently. I think this wide receiving core has a lot of talent here. They brought in Stribling from Wazoo. I think it's a very good add. The offensive line, they address the needs as well. So I'm very excited for this offense. I think a B is a good grade for them.
Looking at the defensive side of the ball, in 2021, I felt this was the best defense in college football. They were first in sacks. I think Alabama had the same amount of numbers, but in one more game. So they had the nation's top pass rush. Top to bottom, I was very happy with this defense all around. The offense really made some mistakes that kind of drove their numbers up a little bit. But in 2021, they were flat out elite. Jim Knowles leaves, and this past season was going to be tough on him overall. 29 points per game, outside the top 100 in all the yardage categories, Nick. And now they only returned 2 starters. The pass rush, as expected, took a step back. 26 stacks, a good number, but they certainly left a good bit on the table, I would say. Colin Oliver, they're switching to a bit of a 3-3-5 now. A great pure edge burner, excellent change of direction. This is a superstar player. Freshman year, I thought that he was going to be a guy to watch because he was a high-end 4-star. Programs like this don't always get those type of players. He had, I think, 10 sacks that year. A guy who's got nice fluid movement in pursuit, nice speed to power with some good leg drive. How will he adjust to being an outside linebacker, or will he be used as a 3 or a 4 tech compared to being, maybe a wide 9? That's going to be the biggest question mark with him. Nathan Latu was really efficient for them, 6'4", 265, and nearly 150 snaps. Cody Waltershid was quite poor as a rotational player. Colin Clay wasn't all that great on the interior D-line. Justin Kirkland, 6'4", 295 from Utah Tech. He was highly impressive and reliable at the FCS level. Same could be said about Anthony Goodlow, who's a good run defender for Tulsa. I think overall this is a solid defensive line. Nowhere near where they were 2 years ago, though, Nick. But I think some of these adds they got mixed with the veterans like Latu and Oliver, I think it's going to go a long way in helping this run defense improve just a little bit.
I think this is a decent run defense unit here. I think Colin Oliver is a good player to have at edge rusher. I like the transition. I think obviously it's something to watch, but very talented player. He had 28 total tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. Those 5 sacks good for the team lead this past season. So certainly when you return your top sack getter, that's a very good thing to have. Colin Clay, solid piece, a rotational piece, 16 total tackles for him, 2 tackles for loss. Latu, 14 total tackles, but the production in terms of tackles for loss and sacks is pretty good with 4.5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks. Walter Shed as well played in limited appearances. He had 11 tackles, 1 tackle for loss and 1 sack. Each of those. I think this is a decent, front 3 here. There are some solid pieces here, and I think it's a good start for this defense.
Schematic change will be something to monitor. Iowa State obviously thrived with this scheme. I think Oklahoma State's taken a bit of a page out of their playbook. Justin Wright, he also arrives from Tulsa. He was a really good coverage backer, was highly productive at the same time for the Golden Hurricanes. 2 very good adds from Tulsa down there, Nick. in the state of Oklahoma. Nicholas Martin provided some good reps in the run defense department. Xavier Benson really wasn't all that great, transferred over from Texas Tech a season ago, but he was productive. He is the team's top returning tackler. Some solid depth overall, a guy in Donovan Stevens, Bo Hardy. The group really needs to be more physical, and they got to be advanced in this scheme transition because I really got to be able to help the rest of these players out. The secondary, obviously, don't have to worry about too much because the five-man secondary stays the same. But this is going to be a little bit different here at the linebacking core. Some different responsibilities from these guys. How do you think they'll adjust?
Justin Wright's a great ad from Tulsa. Great in coverage, very productive, solid player to have. I really like that player to have. Xavier Benson, your top returning tackler, like you said, good player to have. 76 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups. I want to see a little bit more out of Benson. He could potentially be a breakout player here. I think I like the size of him a lot. I think he kind of slots in there pretty well, that slot linebacker position. 76 tackles is not bad, but a lot of snaps for him. I want to see him get a higher rate of production. I think he's a very good player to have on your team. Nicholas Martin as well, 15 total tackles for him returning this linebacking core. It's not, doesn't blow the page away, but I think they made some good moves by getting Wright out of the portal, and Martin's a solid player to have.
Looking at the secondary, pass defense was expected to take a big step back, but they went from 37th to 106th against the pass. At the cornerback positions, Corey Black was below average but gained plenty of experience. Cam Smith also played plenty of snaps, wasn't all that stellar himself. Kendall Daniels was a pleasant surprise in coverage at safety. Liverick Rawls, he was one of the better defenders, especially in the run defense department. Trey Rucker only played 1 game and is now tasked with being a full-time starter after playing a big chunk in the bowl game. The secondary should see some improvements, but not having Jim Knowles is certainly a lingering X factor. Nick, not really sure what a fair assessment of this back end is because I don't see how they, they're not really screaming a lot of talent. Experience isn't exactly a premium either. Kind of a mixed bag, I would say, on this back part of the football team. But at the same time, when you have that 5-man secondary like the scheme provides, it's also pretty easy for some average football players to play good football together if they have good chemistry and IQ and certainly thrive.
Five-back secondary certainly helps here. Daniels returning a good returner, second highest tackler. 71 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions, 5 pass breakups. Kind of a do-it-all guy there. I think Daniels is a really good player to have. Corey Black, I like him a lot. 25 total tackles for him, 1.5 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups. Rawls as well, good player, 24 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack for him. He also had a pass breakup. Cam Smith, 22 total tackles, 2 pass breakups, good player. Then Trey Rucker did not play. Obviously, only played that 1 game in the bowl game, but he got some good snaps there, good experience. They're looking to have him step up and be involved at safety. I think this is a good unit. There is some depth here. I think they will certainly improve from 106th in the nation against the pass. That is imminent. I don't know how far they'll get up. I think there is a lot of room for improvement here.
C+ for me, better positioning, needs to improve. Limit the chunk plays, 123rd in FBS and 10+ yard plays allowed. That's a big number I always look at because 10 yards, of course, is a first down, and that's really where you get grinded down at when you're low in that area. So C+ for me. I definitely think the front six has some nice pieces, and I love the transfers they added. But overall, top to bottom as a unit, I'm just really not sure how much improvement is on the table. Maybe 25 points per game. Maybe they can surprise us and get back to the 2021 levels. I don't expect it, though. I don't think the talent's the same. The defensive coordinator is certainly not the same. So I'm going to go C+, and I think this is going to be a big struggle unit for them, at least when it comes to some of these tougher opponents. It's certainly going to hurt them.
I think that's a good spot to be. I think they can certainly get closer to that B- range by getting all their yards per game categories in the hundreds. I think it's certainly possible. The points per game category at 28.9. You want to lower that, certainly. I think it's possible to get closer to 25. This is a good unit, but obviously, not having Jim Knowles and really trying to continue to replace him as being a big problem. Losing Knowles was a huge issue for this team, and it's proving to continue to show that.
Look at the schedule, preview, and prediction. I don't expect a very good year from Oklahoma State. The run game took a complete nosedive last season. The O-line gets back some veterans and adds some new intriguing pieces. But this scheme is a complete mystery since it seemed to be tailor-made around Sanders, who often struggled. QB could be a big struggle area, especially if Bowman can't refine his form or, stay healthy. I'm definitely very hopeful. I think there's some great upside for this offense, but I think we got to be realistic at the same time. The defense was horrid a season ago and only gets back 2 starters, although some of the adds in the portal could really benefit them from going to a catastrophic failure. Overall, tough seasons in store for Gundy's crew, I think. Non-conference is no slouch. I'm sensing a really bad year overall, but that winning streak is important, Nick. 17 straight winning seasons. I'm going to pick them to go 6-6, and I think they'll win the bowl game. I never make predictions on bowl games, but I think that winning streak's going to be 18 games when we're all said and done with this season.
17 seasons straight winning seasons is very impressive. You think about it in the whole landscape of college football for a program like Oklahoma State to have 17 straight winning seasons. It's just very impressive. And Mike Gundy, my hat's off to you certainly for being involved in that. I think 6-6, pushing that 7-5 range. I think they'll pick off either Iowa State or UCF on the road. I think those are one of the games they'll get maybe one of the games at home against Kansas or Kansas State or BYU. So I certainly think they will get above 500. They will have another winning season to hit that 18 mark. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think 7 wins is possible here looking at this schedule. I think they'll get one of the games that you have them as a loss. Certainly, I think they'll guarantee to get one of those games, potentially get 2, push to 8. I think this team, they can start to figure it out. I like the offense potential. I think there's a lot of potential in this offense. If the defense can find a nice way to defend against the pass and cut down on those chunk plays, this team could definitely win 8 games this year. There's a lot of talent here, and I think Mike Gundy is a fantastic coach. Obviously, this is the end of an era here for Oklahoma State as they transition to a new Big 12. Last Bedlam, certainly tensions and emotions are going to be high there. Very interesting season overall.
I have them winning in Bedlam, the final one, at least for a little bit. I think, like you said, the emotions are going to run high. This is going to be an important game for Gundy, who's not really happy with Oklahoma, and I think he really wants to stick it to him here in this final game. That's never really been a good rivalry, Nick. No matter who wins, that's never really a close game, it seems. September 16th, they host South Alabama. That was a 10-11 win team from a season ago. Get back to Damian Webb, Carter Bradley at running back and quarterback, respectively. So I definitely think that is something to monitor. 6-6 for me. It's going to be it for today's episode, Nick.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you joining me. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.